So today I wanted to do a vlog. So, vlog 1. Today is, I believe it is Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. I don't know what I'm going to talk about doing these vlogs. I think they're more just going to be like therapy sessions for myself, where I just communicate outwards what I'm thinking and feeling. Hopefully people can hear that and enjoy what they hear, or maybe not enjoy it, but can relate or maybe explore, play with the ideas that I'm talking about, relate to my emotions or work with them if they want to, and see what happens. So as far as that goes, I have ADHD, and I was recently not pharmaceutically diagnosed, but I was therapeutically diagnosed with ASD, or Autism Spectrum Disorder, or high-functioning autism, or Asperger's syndrome, whatever you would like to call it. And I'd met kids who had it, and they could tell that that's like, they thought I had it too. I had teachers who said that I had it. I had therapists now who said that I have it. I've also talked to a lot of other people about it. I thought I've had it too, but I didn't want to identify with it and then throw it out there and be like, oh, I have it, ha ha ha, and then like have no one else, I don't know if I'd say no one else see it, but it more was like, a lot of people in my life have told me I didn't have it. So I guess that's where I'll start with this, since this is something relatively recent. This is in the last like 2 weeks. My autism comes in waves for me, at least how I've dealt with it, right? So sometimes it's consistent. For example, sensitivity overloads come from, sometimes it's things that I'm touching. It's something so simple as like when I do the dishes. Is one of the reasons I don't like doing the dishes, and when it makes me mad or it frustrates me, is the water on my skin and the touching of bacteria and wet food makes me really anxious, and it makes me really, really uncomfortable. And you know, like the process of cleaning, I get it, is like, wait, that's why you clean, but it doesn't change the fact that it makes me really uncomfortable, and sometimes it can be outright painful. Like, I'll actively avoid touching certain things. Sometimes I don't like having soap on my hands because of the same thing. I have really sensitive hands, but yet also really durable hands. I spent a large chunk of my life where my way of stimming, at least this is my opinion on how I'm stimming. I don't know if this is actually it. I guess I have to talk to my therapist about it. But stimming for me involved anytime I was uncomfortable or I was overwhelmed or I was dealing with too much, I would start biting myself. And I would bite my hands to the point where I'd have really, really, really bad cuts. And I still do. I have really bad scarring. I still bite. It's something that I stim a lot. And people are like, we gotta do something about it. You know, like, we'll put lemons on your hands, or we'll, you know, put this or put that, or do this or do that to prevent you from doing it. And I feel like the better solution would be I should have something else that helps me stim. And I think now that I'm older, one of those things sometimes is rocking my head back and forth, or fidgeting my hands, or having a fidget toy, which falls more to the ADHD spectrum of things. But for ADHD, it's more like having a thing to focus on that helps, which does help me for my focusing issues. But I think that stimming is different. For me, when I'm stimming, I need a thing to use with my hands, because my hands, instead of being focused on something, my hands need to be moving and doing something. So I remember my mom used to get really upset with me when I would start, I see it now as stimming, but at the time I didn't see it like that, where I would rhythmically tap things, and I don't mean rhythm like I would try to play a song. It was more like I would tap the table starting from my pinky to my thumb, and I would just tap it and 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 tap it, and I would do it consistently for like a while, and it would relax me, but it would stress my mom out, and it stressed other people out too. because they would be like, you're disrupting my peace or whatever their thing was. I didn't really know how to handle that, so I stopped doing it. And the biting of my hands thing is something that I do so often. It was the only thing that I did where people didn't yell at me about it, and now people do yell at me about it, and it sometimes puts me into an anxiety, stress spiral. But it's hard to really handle and confront. I'm also hyperverbal, so I talk a lot. That's part of the reason why I made this, is that I talk so much. I have so many things to say, and so it's like I often feel like I can't talk, partly because one of the things that I hyperfixate on, which is another two things from ADHD and autism that I experience, where I hyperfixate on politics, which is something I got really, really into in one of my hyperfixation waves when I was 15 to 18, and then it amplified from there, and then it stuck with me from then onwards, and it has shifted and changed and sort of rolled around and transformed in different ways. And I was obsessed with it for like 6 years, and then last like year or so I stopped being really into it. I so disconnected from politics, and I connected to other things. I became very spiritual. But even now, with the rise of witch talk and other things like that, spiritual TikTok and different cultures and stuff, I feel less comfortable communicating about my belief systems because I often feel like I'm appropriating people's cultures. So I don't really talk about what I do, or sometimes I will just drop an entire faith altogether because I don't really want to offend people or upset people, even if their culture, not as the people, but their culture as a collection of ideas, brought me comfort. Or even if their deities or their angels or their demons or whatever made me feel comfortable, that's why I would lean towards them. I spent a large chunk of my life having that be a thing. So that's another thing I have to fix it on, which is fantasy, mythology, religion, spirituality. And I don't limit it, so I just hyperfixate on a bunch of stuff. It isn't just one aspect of that religion, it's more all aspects of all religions, and some come out more to me than others, and some are more comfortable for me than others. I think that's very normal. I don't think that's necessarily a neuroatypical thing. I just think it's just how I am. And then, let's see, what else can I talk about? When it comes to things that have been bothering me lately, I've been thinking about, so some physical things, right? I've been thinking about putting an altar in my backyard. I want to build one, or buy one, or make one, or fuse one with things that are made and not made. Maybe craft one, I don't know. And then, it's the thing I want to do. But I haven't got around to it. And I've reached a point where maybe I should just start my own belief system, because I've been thinking about, like I mentioned earlier, not knowing what to talk about, and not knowing if I should talk about my beliefs, because I like talking about my beliefs. I'm hyperverbal, so I love digesting something. I'll give an example. Some religions are open, some religions are closed, some belief systems are open, some belief systems are closed, cultures, traditions, all those things. And for me, I agree with elements of multiple different cultures. I would never subscribe myself to one particular culture or religion, and that I think is part of the problem, at least for me, is that I think a lot of religions and cultures demand that you be part of their culture and be somewhat monotheistic about it. And when I say monotheistic, I don't mean believing in a singular God. I more mean believing in a singular set of cultures and traditions. Whereas I'm very eclectic. I pick up little things of everything because, and I sort of collage them together to create what I believe in. And it's sort of like I take a bunch of different parts of a bunch of different things to create a new whole thing, a new whole set of belief systems. So, like, I mentioned Greek mythology, and I've heard a lot of things about Greek people getting upset when regular witches go to the word to do certain things and take on their gods and then culturally appropriate them and then put these certain things on them, and it's irritating because it feels a certain kind of way, and it makes sense why they'd be upset. But I think in that, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the one who's doing those things, so I don't do them. I don't say anything. I don't open up because I don't want to. Not because I inherently don't want to, but because I don't want to upset people, and I don't want to offend people, and I don't want to have people come at me and attack me and get angry at me for unintentionally harming them, right? Because, a lot of people talk about how you can do something and not intend to hurt someone, but still hurt them. And I don't want to hurt people, even if what I'm doing in private is hurting them, although I don't know how that would work, based logically. It doesn't really make sense to me, that part. Where, like, I'll give an example. Let's say I don't use the term spirit animal in public from the Native American tradition. But spirit animal articulately matches what I believe in. I believe that spirit, which is a interwoven mass connection of life and nature in a Jungian sort of way, where it's a collection of inexpressible ideas personified through the form of an animal, such as a spirit guide, or an animal spirit guide in that case, or, like I mentioned earlier, a spirit animal, an animal that's specifically tied to you and your link in terms of an animal as the bi-proxy between you and the spirit world. Not so much as a messenger for you, but more as a physical, semi-physical, semi-corporeal representation of you. And I don't know. But I know that a lot of people don't like it when people are like, oh, some which makes sense, like, Starbucks coffee is my spirit animal, which doesn't make any sense to me because it's not an animal and it's also not linked to spirit, so it doesn't really make sense to me. But saying something like, let's take myself as an example. If I were to say that I believed that a Black Panther was my spirit animal, the reason why I say that is I spent most of my life with that being my favorite animal. It was also an animal that I had dreams about. They were animals that I would have dreams I was riding and being one with and communing with in ways that are hard to describe. And then people say, well, maybe you should switch from spirit animal to something else. So part of this process, I would say, creating a new word. So that's what I'll start with. I would instead use the terms soul animal or source animal, considering that I do believe in source and I do believe in souls. And they both fit into another element of what it is, even if they have a slightly different meaning depending on who you're interacting with. So the reason why I say that it's hard to really see if something is wrong or misused is if in your private practice, when you're alone, when you're not around anyone else, and you're not communicating with anyone else, and you self-identify with the terms spirit animal or any other kind of thing that's like that, the question that comes to me is, maybe I just see spirituality and religion different because I have a different level of sensitivity than other people. But when I see things like spirit animals and smudging or other things from Native American faith, they inherently make sense to me, even though I am Native American, like I have Native American blood in me, and I have like a lineage to Native Americans, but I never grew up on a reservation. I don't have family who's on reservations, at least not any that I'm communicating with. So I don't really have a link to that element of my heritage, and I don't really want one in the way of a community. Which is not to say that if a community opened up to me that I wouldn't accept it, because that's different. I actually would be very open to joining a community that is open to my unique perspectives on their culture. But if they want me to conform to their points of view and their cultures and their traditions, I will not do that. And that's for personal reasons. That's just because it doesn't fit into what I want. It's not into my goals. And the same thing goes for really anything else in other cultures. So that even extends to, like I mentioned earlier, Greek things. Because, like, I do believe in Greek deities. I do believe in Hindu deities. And there's even some principles in these different religions that I agree with. But I don't know how to properly communicate with them, with the average human, or a human who exists within those confines, right? And they're like, well, you can never truly understand a religion if you're not part of it. And I would feign to question, I'm not part of any culture. I'm not part of white culture, just by being white. I'm handled by white culture, right? What's the word I'm looking for? White culture has a tendency to, specifically white American culture, has a tendency to limit, constrict, or monopolize or capitalize on my beliefs. So I don't like it. So I don't identify with it. I can't help the color of my skin, but I can say that I can disassociate from them. Because for me, I'm not white. Someone will say, but you are white. How much of that conversation is you projecting onto me your perspectives of white people as a whole, or white people as the people you've met, onto me, and how much of that is just you being like a dick, right? And being like, no, you're white. To me, it's the same as someone coming up to me and me being like, oh yeah, I'm a pagan or I'm a witch, and they go, no, you're a Satan worshiper. It's like, no. What do you mean? Like, when I say I'm not white, I mean I don't identify with the white collective group. I acknowledge that I have the privilege of being a white person. I acknowledge that things are easier for me because I'm white. I mean, not that much easier for me, considering that I don't interact with the outside world. And I hate most interactions with most people, particularly because of things like this, which is people projecting their own perspectives on me and my non-self-identifiers, right? So, like, I'm also a non-binary person. So people will project onto me, don't you want to be a man? Don't you want to look like a man? Don't you want to work out? Don't you want to be bigger? I'm like, no. Not really. I'm perfectly fine with the way that I look. I'm perfectly fine with the way that I am. If I decide to change, I decide to change, but that shouldn't be reflective of your perceptions of me or the communities and societies that we exist within. That doesn't really make much sense to me. But I feel the same way about this as well. I don't like conforming to anything. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being controlled. I just don't like it. And that's a big element of my biggest problems in my life, but also where I'm the most stubborn, right? Because if you're projecting onto me, or just communicating, you don't have to be projecting, you could just be talking to me, and I say, why can't I do this thing? Why can't I be this person? Why can't I be my own person? Why can't I not be affiliated with this group or these people or these things? And then people say, well, because I said so. Because we said so. Because my collective have said so. Whatever that collective is. Or I as an individual think that you should do this. How much of that is manipulating me? How much of that is you trying to force me into a box? And people can be like, people aren't trying to force you into a box. Then that, as far as I see, when I hear that, it's like, this feels very gaslighting. Like, I feel like I'm being told that my experience is not real. Or that, like, it's the same thing that's happened with having ADHD my whole life. It's the same thing that's happened with autism, except it's like we live in a world of people who are constantly covered by veils. They're just constantly covered in self-perpetuating blindfolds. They're just sitting here and telling me that I have to be a certain kind of person all the time. Right? Like, I'm non-binary, but colloquially you'd call me gay. I predominantly am attracted to men, and my appearance would personify me as a man. So, but I'm not really. I am pansexual. I don't have a specific attraction to any gender. I'm attracted to all genders, and I don't really care. And in my own time, I pursue what I pursue. And then on the other end of that, if you look at my gender expression, it's definitely not masculine and it's definitely not feminine. I sort of feel like a homeless person is the best way to identify, or like an ancient Victorian vampire. Those are like the two aesthetics I feel comfortable in. And I mean, there's a few other ones. And like, it's just really hard to sit here and be like, I don't know how much of this is going to be bad self-talk, so I guess I can say what sometimes my brain says to me. So sometimes it feels like I'm just complaining, right? Like I'm just, oh, boo-hoo. Your life is so hard. It's like, no, it's not. My mental illnesses are, though. They are hard. They're crippling. I feel like I want to die. And not like, please kill me, die. But like, I feel like sometimes, this is going to sound weird. Sometimes I feel like as a white person, I should just die. That way I can give more opportunities to black people to be happier. And like, that isn't like, oh, boo-hoo, it's me. It's like, no, genuinely, because like, being white sometimes is inherently obstructing. Like someone else, a group of people made space for you and guaranteed that other people can have space. Like, that's a big problem that I think bothers me. This is also part of the reason why, like, I feel like sometimes I have a different perspective on all these topics than the average person, because I don't want to hurt anyone. And I bet I do. All the time. I don't know how to handle that. And vice versa. Maybe I'm not hurting people. I just think I am. And I'm just overthinking it because of my anxiety. I don't know. When it comes to I'll return onto a previous topic. So I was talking about the spirit animal thing. And if I'm not talking to anybody, am I really hurting you? Right? Like, if me and one friend are having a conversation about spirit animals, neither one of us are Native American, but we both, to a certain extent, identify with this concept. Spiritually, right? It's still considered cultural appropriation because we're taking from another culture without understanding the context they've been put through, and I don't necessarily capitalize on it because I'm not like, what's your spirit animal? In like a weird, like, faux pop style. I'm more like, in terms of animals, what animal do you think does your soul or your spirit connect with? I mean it in the sense of its literal counterpart. How does spirit personify itself to you in the form of an animal? Which makes me wonder if I'm, which I might not be, and you know, if you're Native American, you can tell me in the comments, maybe I'm not actually doing what I think I'm doing, right? Like maybe that's not what it means to be a spirit, to have a spirit animal. Maybe a spirit animal is something completely, totally different. And people say, well, why don't you just use a different term, like a familiar? Well, because a familiar doesn't quite evoke what I'm talking about. A familiar normally is something tied to you, but it's also something that's like in service to you. Familiar is normally your soul made into and your magic made into an animal, which is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an animal that exists somewhat outside of me, but within me, but outside of me. And it is different than me. But it is a thing that I've always seen as something I'm drawn towards. And it's something that is a reflection of nature and how it communicates. Because I don't know, can you actually identify with a spirit animal? I don't even know if that's actually a Native American belief. Maybe you can. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. I mean, I also get a large chunk of my social information through TikTok, because I don't have a long attention span, except for weird lore videos about, like, video games, or movies, or anime, and then you can, like, sit there and psychologically explain a character to me over the course of 6 hours, and I sit through it. But if it was literally anything else, I can't focus. It's just weird, but I don't know. Some days I wonder why I'm here, right? So, like, I know why I'm here, spiritually speaking. I know I'm here physically. My parents reprocreated and had me. That's why I'm here. And I've somehow survived. But if I were to ask, why am I here spiritually? There's so many mosquitoes out here today. They just like my computer because it's warm. So if you're, I wouldn't say spiritual, but like, I don't know. For me, it's spiritual. So like, I believe in some things that people don't believe in, which is like star seeds and earth seeds. I have some potentially controversial opinions. Don't know if they're controversial or not. I guess it would have to depend on who I'm talking to. But I often perceive a lot of, I think anybody can be an earth seed. Anybody can be a star seed. It depends on how you convey your energy and your soul's function, right? So star seeds are people who have lived multiple incarnations not on Earth, and then earth seeds are people who have lived a lot of incarnations on Earth and have occasionally lived on other planets or in other dimensions and stuff. So for me, I think I'm a star seed because I don't feel human here. So when I said something earlier, I mentioned that I don't feel like a white person. I also don't feel like a person. I don't feel like a human. I don't feel like anything. I feel otherworldly. Some days I feel like I'm an illusion. Some days I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to feel something and try to explain it. I feel like I'm not allowed to talk about things because sometimes it's for like people will think I'm crazy. For other people it's like people think I'm stupid, which I've always felt my whole life. Or I can't talk about what I'm thinking because I'm going to upset someone, or I'm going to make someone else look bad by conveying my own opinions. So I've always struggled with that. Either be my family or my friends. That's just how I've always felt. And the reason why I'm putting this out in public, right, because I want people to see it and hear it and understand it, is because, you know, who knows, in 100 years, I could still be doing this. Still be making vlogs. Still be talking about my trauma and my pain. Because it's sometimes hard to talk to people, especially people who look different than you and who see the world different than you do, when you're trying to talk about how you function. Because like I think about this sometimes. Like, I was watching a TikTok recently, and it was there's a black woman, and she was talking about how she feels like, why do white men specifically always feel like they need to talk about themselves first? And like, I as a white man was like, that's a good question. Why do I do that? And for me, I recognize it isn't just like because I'm a white guy who has confidence. It's like, no. I interject my opinions into things all the time because there's this childlike naivety to me that wants to. I want you to know how I feel. I want you to tell me how you feel. Even if it hurts me. Even if it hurts you. Like, I want to feel like people can actually talk to other people. Like, they could talk about themselves. Because I spent a large chunk of my life not feeling like I could. Like, I always talked, and I talked a lot, but I never felt like I could talk. Not like really. I just felt like I was needing to silence a portion of myself for the benefit of other people. Or just because I didn't want to annoy other people. I didn't want to make other people feel inconvenient by my presence. So, I spent a lot of my life feeling that way. I don't know if other people feel that way, though. I don't know if that's a normal ASD thing, or if it's an ADHD thing, or if it's... maybe it's a silent thing that, like, white guys feel in general. Because, like, we live in a world that tells us that we should have opinions. We should talk. We should express ourselves. We should feel our feelings, communicate how we want to communicate. But then we don't, right? So, like, I think a lot of people, especially minorities, they can be told that all day long and they just won't do it. Either because they don't feel like it, or just because, like, there's a level of ingrained oppression in not communicating that is internalized for those people. And it sucks for them. Like, I can see that. So when they see, why do white people always feel like they have to give an opinion? Even if they're not asked for their opinion, they just still give it. I think part of that is we've been listening to a different group of people. We listen to the media that tells us to open our mouths. Now the media is telling us not to. Now the media is like, white people shut up. And so some of us don't, because we're still trained in from that youth of being trained to talk. Speak up, speak out. If you don't agree with something, say something. It's very much a thing that was taught to people in general. And for me, I just didn't talk about what I really wanted to talk about. I talked about what people wanted me to talk about. So I talked about, as a kid, whatever was on my mind. I got bullied a lot too. I'm thinking back. I'm really replaying the movie of my life back in my head right now. Like, I remember being a kid. I was getting bullied because I talked a lot. I got bullied a lot because I was feminine. I got bullied a lot for being gay. I got bullied a lot for a lot of different stuff. But the thing is that the things that people would make fun of me for were also things that were like I was really good at doing. Like people would make fun of me for being gay, but I also was like constantly surrounded by women who thought it was awesome and I was really fun to be around. And I was somebody they cared about. And there was also weird sexual tension between me and other women, which I never really understood, but it was a thing that happened. In fact, the first time I didn't have a sexual tension between me and a woman who was within like 5 years of my age range was a friend of mine, was my roommate, who I'm currently living with, and she's very masculine. She just doesn't care, and we just don't have that same thing that I had to deal with. I didn't have to deal with what I had to do with them with her, which is nice. And it's both a gift and a curse. I liked it because it meant like I had sway over communicating with women. The problem was that I wasn't my own person. I was just like a gay guy to them, and that gayness put them in the boat of, I want to be your best friend, oh my god. And I was like, I don't know you, why do you, like, cool, great, we can be best friends, but like, I never had friends because I was always moving from school to school to school, so I would know someone for a short period of time and then forget about them. And then I would come back like a year or two later and say hi to them, and they'd be like, oh my god, Steven, I missed you, it's been so long, or whatever. And like, they're still really nice to me and they do care about me, but like, I recognized I didn't really have friends. I did, as I got older. I had a few people. There's a few people in my life who I will always want to talk to, even if I shouldn't talk to them. Or if they don't want to talk to me. One of those things. So I just either don't talk to them because I assume they don't want to talk to me. Or something along those lines. But I also noticed I also got bullied for talking a lot. Because I loved to talk. But not really. Because I seem like I love to talk, but I don't love to talk. I don't know how to word it. I love to talk when it's not me time. If that makes sense. I love to put things externally and communicate with other people when it's my turn to communicate what I need to communicate. But if I am not in that state of mind, I just want to be alone, I don't want to talk to anyone. That's the thing that happens, right? Like my me time. And I just got really, really, really ridiculed for talking all the time. Like, to the point to where people were like, God, you're so fucking annoying. And I was like, yeah, probably am. They're right. And I still think that. Like, I still think people find me annoying. And I know people do. Like, even the people I'm closest to find me annoying. And there's not much I can do about it. Like, I'm literally wired differently than other people. Like, it is painful to shut up sometimes. Like, emotionally, mentally, physically. I don't want to talk over people. I don't want to make them feel invalidated. I don't want to hurt them, but I feel like I do it unconsciously. And it's a thing that's just hard. It's rough. It's rough, buddy. I don't know. I've always felt annoying. I mean, part of it was being taught I'm annoying. Like, I remember, I know she sees this, she's gonna be so mad at this, but like, remember when I was a kid, I could tell that even my mom was like, oh my god, shut up. Shut up. Which, to be fair, I talked a lot. Had a lot to say. I think I talked so much that my mom was like, I think you need to go to therapy to communicate whatever you need to communicate. And when I did that, I learned agency. And when I learned agency, I stopped relying on my mom. And there was a different dynamic after that. But any person I talk to, I just talk so fucking much. And I talk because I want to. I want to talk and make them happy. But I also don't want to talk because I don't want to bother people, but I also want to be alone. It's a weird dichotomy of very, very different points of view that I have to deal with on a consistent basis. I don't know. My bullying was weird. It was because some of it was physical. I remember I knew this girl. She used to beat me up. She was bigger than me, big chick, and she just like hit me. She grabbed my hand. She threw my head up against a brick wall. It was intense. It was what it was. And like, never did anything about it. I sort of just like vented. But I didn't do anything about it. And I think back, someone grabbed me by my head and put my head against the wall. It was a chick. She like did that. And I couldn't do anything about it. I like told, I think, a counselor, and the counselor was like, pretty much like, whatever. And I told the teacher didn't care. And when I think about it, I think this is part of the reason why I got so into politics when I was like 18 or so, is that I had been abused by women my whole life in different ways, but a lot of times it was physical. I remember being in first grade. It just goes to show what weird trauma I have. And I was hanging out with this girl, and she was like trying to get my attention, and I was like, I just want to like run and relax, like pick flowers, like read. Like I just wanted to like do my own thing or hang out with my friends, and she wouldn't let me. And she like grabbed me by my arm, and she had like, she was like a grade or two higher than me, and she had sharp nails. She grabbed me and she like put her nails like in my arm. I remember telling a teacher about it, and because I was in pain, and she was like, where'd you get that mark from? And I was like, whatever her name was. And she was like, oh, okay. She didn't do anything about it, but like that happened. And that was like one initial example of a girl attacking me not doing anything about it. I spent a large chunk of my life with women making unwanted advances on me. I don't know if it was because I was gay. I don't really know why they did it. But they would do it a lot. And I didn't do anything most of the time because I was so scared of... I was taught my whole life, don't be violent, don't attack women. And I remember I was dating a girl, and we both were back and forth abusive. We were not, I was not in the right at all throughout the situation. And like, I sort of had a mental breakdown, and like, I hit her. And I don't really remember what she did. It was almost like she became the physical representation of all of the trauma that I had experienced. And she was also someone who was physical with me. She was also violent with me, and I was also violent with her. And the first time I was like actually violent though, like I hit her, like I like snapped, hit her. And everybody around me was like, you can't hit women. It wasn't a don't hit people, that's immoral. It was don't hit women. And I was like, if you're gonna tell me not to do something, be consistent. Like, if I have a daughter or a son, I'm gonna be real with them. I'd be like, I don't want you to hit anybody. And if someone hits you, I mean, hit them back. They hit you, hit them back. That's literally what I believed. In this case, I hit her, and it wasn't a physical provocation. It was just her, like, she lied to me, or she, like, kept something from me, and it just, like, I didn't know how to process my emotions. I was also, like, going through puberty. I, like, did not understand. I was, like, 14, 15 at the time. I was a kid, and I just snapped. And then I got kicked out of school. That was intense. But I mean, it was an experience. It was what I had to do, I guess, in terms of, like, I had to get kicked out of school. It was like, I didn't have a choice. It was like, no, we're going to take you out of school. So, from then on, I just didn't go to school. I didn't know what to do with my life. I've always felt like I didn't have control over my life. So, like, even after I got kicked out of school, it sort of felt like my life fell apart since then. And I've always had this, and this is my whole life, I've always had this problem with schools and how they treat kids, and how I don't think I would have hit her if I was actually taught properly in school, or if, like, people heard me, or if someone told me there's other ways to handle your anger and your pain, but nobody told me. People just didn't care. And the only person who did care was my mom, but even she fell into the bubble of, don't hit girls, because girls are, what, fragile? No, they're not. Like, they are physically weaker than men, but they're not really. Like, a woman can still knock the shit out of you. Like, a woman may not be she may not be physically, like, big, but a girl can still hurt you. Like, because, like, I don't think I was the victim in that situation. I think I was a victim of a lot of stuff, but in that situation, I think we both were victims and perpetrators of cruel behavior in different ways, but we did not see our behavior as cruel to the other person. Again, because I think we were teenagers and we just didn't know. We didn't have an understanding of the real world and how it is. And, you know, there's a lot of people who don't know how to see that. So, you know, none of them got to see what happened behind closed doors. I lived with the girl, basically. I shared a bedroom with her. Like, we were a couple. We were the same age, so, like, it didn't really bother me that we were in the same, like, room together. And we had a relationship. She was my first everything. She was not my first everything. She was my first female anything. I've been with guys before, and I had already had my experiences with men before then. But she was my first girl who I was, like, thought I was in love with. Part of me was in love with her. I was in love with her for, like, I think I dropped. Oh no, I got kicked out of high school in like 2011, and I think I was still in love with her until like 2014. Not in love with her, but I was still, like, hung up about the pain of what had happened. And I was still mourning our relationship and still wanting to be her friend. I didn't even want to be with her in a relationship anymore. I just wanted to be her friend. I just wanted to apologize to her and have her forgive me, and then us continue to be okay, but I don't think that was possible. Now I don't think that was possible. At the time I thought it was, but now I know it's not possible. And that really affected me. I didn't know how to talk about it, but it affected me. So after that, we broke up, and I ended up dating someone else. It was a guy. Broke up with him. Ended up dating another guy. Broke up with him. Ended up dating the guy I'm dating now. And I've been with him for, like, since 2014 or 15. I was still in love with her while I was with this guy. And again, it wasn't like in love, like, I love you, oh my god. It was more like, I was like, no, I'm still depressed about us breaking up. which I feel like is different from being in love with someone. It was more like I was just through like relationship grief. And when we finally, like, when I started taking my new relationship seriously, because I didn't take the other two relationships all that seriously, but once I started taking the relationship with my current partner seriously is when I finally moved on and got over it. And now I'm completely and totally over her. And once I did that, I learned that I was okay to an extent. I still had trauma. I fell out of one set of trauma to go into another set of trauma. I've never spent longer than like 2 months being single in my whole life. I've always been dating people, which makes me feel like I've had an addiction to codependency. I felt like I needed someone to take care of me emotionally, mentally, and physically. I think that's also somewhat of a subconscious byproduct of having autism and ADHD, is feeling like I can't do anything on my own, so I need another person. And I love the person I'm with, and I'm happy to be with them. But like sometimes I do feel like I'm just like leeching off of them. And there's just a lot that goes into this stuff, right? Like, I've had a lot go on in my life. This is why, like, I have a lot of trauma. I had a lot of trauma, and a lot of my trauma, when it was tied to women, it turned into, like, made me into an anti-feminist. And I had a sordid relationship with my mom that was just complicated, and that also had the part to play in me becoming an anti-feminist when I was like 18. Once I got older, I stopped being an anti-feminist. I completely and totally I shifted from being an anti-feminist, which is the gateway drug in my opinion. You start out, if you're a white guy, or you could be a black guy too, you could be any guy really, you could even be a girl, it's also a thing, and become an anti-feminist. But that the reason why it panders so heavily to us is, to a certain extent, there is a mistreatment happening to men that's unseen, it's untalked about. But the ideas of anti-feminism, which realistically were men's rights, not anti-feminism, at least from where I was standing when I was in that, it was easy to go into that and then shift into anti-SJW or anti-left or whatever, partly because of indoctrination, like coercion and propaganda from centrists and alt-right people, and even anti-feminists themselves. Because to some amount, even now as an adult, I still have some anti-social justice beliefs, but there's not a lot. They kind of died when I recognized that being an anti-feminist and being a anti-SJW was an anti-left-leaning person. Ultimately, I wasn't helping anyone. I wasn't making anyone happy. I was buying into propaganda, and I had to recognize that the hard way by really taking in left-leaning media, because I was like, oh, they're so stupid. I'm gonna go listen to them, and so I can learn about it, so I can counteract it, and I can, whatever, disprove them. And then I was listening to them, and I was like, no, wait, they're right. This is correct. Oh no, I see where they're coming from. Oh, they have facts and reasons behind their... Oh. And then I recognized everything that I had perceived or had been perceiving from the previous things was I was being lied to. That sucks. That you're being lied to and you believe it. You really do. So for a while, all I did was consume that stuff. I wouldn't call it alt-right media, but it was pretty much alt-right media. It was faux centrism. And now I'm different. I've become much more independent in my belief systems. I guess you could consider me a left left-leaning communist, socialist, whatever. I'm not a capitalist. That's one thing. I don't believe in capitalism. And I don't believe in corporations. Mass corporations that lie and corrupt and manipulate and abuse. That I don't believe in. But other than that, there's nothing much that I do or don't believe in. I just see things. I don't know how to process them. Like, that's one of the problems with, like, having a learning disability is, and even a communication disability, it's feeling like people don't hear you when you tell them you can't process things. Like, right? So, like, I'll give an example. So, a right-wing person can explain to me this whole conspiracy theory they have about the left. And I wouldn't be able to understand it because it's just too much information and I have a learning disability and it would prevent me from understanding it. But a left-leaning person could do the same exact thing and I still wouldn't understand it. And it would take me so long to learn those things. So I never really actually learned about them. And it didn't make me happy. It made me sad. At the end of the day, I recognized I was really depressed, really angry, especially when I was in the anti-SJW stuff. And I'm still angry now as a left-leaning person, but I'm angry at different people. Initially, I was angry at people who were different than me, or people who acted in bad faith, who were left-leaning people, which now I see them as fake people, who are fake left-leaning people, who are people who spout SJW platitudes, but don't really believe in them. Or they believe in them so much to the point that they're actually, like, kind of toxic. And they're willing to, despite holding very valid and very honest and correct social justice platforms and beliefs, their way of going about it is, like, absolutely unacceptable. Like attacking people, going after people, canceling people, being like, you don't deserve anything, doxing people, like, no, I don't agree with that. I wouldn't do it. But that's different for me than the opposite, right? So, like, for me, I would totally cancel culture Nazis. Like, they shouldn't have platforms. Sorry, they shouldn't. And if they do have platforms, right, we should have countermeasures to prevent us from becoming fascists. So that's part of the thing for me. Don't be a Nazi. Don't be a fascist. But I don't know if people will hear that. So I don't know. And I've also sort of reached a point where it's like, I try listening to black voices, and sometimes I wonder if I get too mad, or if it's white fragility, or if I'm being racist and not even noticing it. Not racist, but, like, prejudiced. Because I know I'm not racist. I don't think we should pass any legislation against black people in any framework or shape or form. Same thing goes for any other minority. I don't believe in the systematic racist system we exist within. It sucks. But I also don't believe in the opposite. So, like, I don't believe that we should be putting anyone's rights in jeopardy. But I also don't think we should be giving, like, weird rights to specific people either. Like, I don't know how to word it in a way that makes sense. For me, I'm political, and I've always been political for one reason, right? Like, not always, but I became political for a couple of reasons. Almost all of my politics come down to my fundamental beliefs, right? So I'll get into that. What do I fundamentally believe? Right? Like, principles, pillars of beliefs that I have. And for me, that's love everybody. For me, like belief systems I hold myself accountable to love everyone, to forgive everyone, even the people who have traumatized you, even the people who have abused you. Learn to understand them, learn to forgive them, learn to not be a dick to them, and hope that they get better, and communicate that however you feel like you can. And on the other end, I also feel another one of mine is be compassionate and be kind, and hope that your goals and the way you do things guarantee that you're being compassionate and kind, right? Like, I think people should wear masks because we're in the middle of a panini. And if you see that, you're like, okay, why? Why should we wear masks? Well, for me, it's like, I think you should wear a mask to keep us safe, to keep yourself safe. If you're like, well, I think it's a conspiracy, I don't think it's real, and be like, okay, but you should still wear a mask in case it's not one. In case it's just you. Try to be compassionate to other people, if you can, right? Which is different from other people who are like, put on a mask or you're, you know, we're gonna kill you. Whatever. You know what I mean? It's not actually that, but it's more like just extreme aggression. And I guess it also falls into the SJW thing, too. Like, I get it. Wanting to be extreme. It is a instinct, but even though I'm not a Christian, I don't identify with Christian theology, I do think that there's a level of the sins, when done in excess, can be extremely detrimental, right? So, like, anger is good because it's a motivation to keep people, you know, to recognize injustice or mistreatment or to recognize when something is wrong and then handle it. Problem is, wrath, rage, fury, those are different things. Those come out as ways that are just they're not going to be healthy for you. And they're not going to be healthy for other people. You're ultimately, when people say, you know, the sin is the true source of all evil, I would believe that one of those sins is wrath. Because the more wrath we have, the more wrath that we evoke in other people, the more wrath that we evoke in ourselves and project it onto other people, the worse the planet's going to get. And it doesn't create any positive solutions for anyone. Or it may create positive solutions for some people but not others, which to me ultimately is not a great idea. The same thing goes for any other of the sins, right? Like, even sins that I feel like I may have or have in abundance or whatever, right? So, like, if you're a hypersexual person who's so lustful that you're hurting other people, right? Like, you're banging all these people and essentially, like, damaging relationships because you want to get a quick fix, just sleeping with someone, that to me is also not good. But I, again, also think that, like, if I was a consenting adult in the participation of it, and you're not, like, destroying someone's relationship, I'm perfectly fine with you sleeping with whoever you want, as long as you're healthy, and you're staying healthy, and doing things that are good for you. That's what I might say. And it goes the same thing for any other sins. Because, like, it's hard for people to not get mad at stuff. I get mad at stuff. If you could see me when I'm not like this, where I'm, like, pretty calm right now, but, like, when I get really intense and passionate, I feel like I'm a different person. Still me, but it's just I feel different. I don't like it. Like, I fall into the boat of rage, but I also recognize, like, I shouldn't, and other people shouldn't either, and, like, it can be frustrating because you want to be angry. you want to attack and hurt people sometimes, but it's not the solution. At least not most of the time. Occasionally it is. If it's a one-off thing, sure. But if it's like every other day you're mad, I was mad every day with my political opinions. I was mad at everyone. I was mad at Christian people. I was mad at conservatives. I was mad at Democrats. And I was mad at Republicans. I was mad at liberals. And I was mad at SJWs. And I was mad at everybody. I was mad at whole groups of people. I was mad at black people. I was mad at white people. I was mad at, Hispanic people. I was mad at gay people. I was mad at straight people. And, I was just so angry all the time. I was angry at everybody. I didn't really know why. I mean, part of it was also trauma. I had a lot of trauma. I had a lot of unspent rage. I had anger because I was a gay man. And I spent most of my life being called the F slur. And I spent the majority of my life being mistreated because of my sexual identity and my social identity and my gender identity, and people thinking that I was weird and people thinking that I was dumb. And so I had all this pent-up anger because I felt like people just didn't care. They didn't care about me. So I started to care about other people. And the only way I ever really healed a lot of my pain was by just unconditionally caring. Just sitting there and just loving people. By giving people attention. And being like, no, I hear you. Continue. I'm listening. I care. And that's how I have the people I have in my life now. I have people who really do care about me. So, if you're someone who's down the pipeline, you hear this, you identify as an alt-right or a Nazi or a troll or all these different things, go to therapy. Change the plan. Care about people. If you can't, I don't know what to tell you. Sometimes you gotta learn how to care. You're trained with your identity throughout most of your life. Even when you don't identify with it. I still fall into the trappings of white fragility despite not identifying as a white person. Because I was trained by our society to have those ideas. I still fall into a lot of things. I mean, part of it is also and I mean, I get the whole white fragility thing. I also wonder sometimes if white fragility also falls into the boat of I'm hypersensitive. I have literally hypersensitivity disorder. I'm very sensitive emotionally to everything all the time. I think that's part of the reason why I overreact. I get angry and I yell and I shout and I've been physically violent with people is because I'm so sensitive that I can't handle external stimulus and it overwhelms me, and then I panic by fight responding. And my anxiety locks me into fight and flight so often. So I don't want to attack black people, but I probably do in ways that I don't even think about. I mean, I've never had a black friend who's you're attacking me, stop. That's never happened. Almost all my black friends, actually, I'm very particular who I pick among my friend groups. They be black or otherwise. So, when I think of the black friends I do have, and I think about white fragility, most of my black friends aren't trying to educate me. They give me their opinion, but they don't try to educate me. They're not I know the truth and I'm going to tell you about it. Because most of the time, I don't want that. I don't think they want it either. I specifically pick friends. First off, I pick neuroatypical people as my friends most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. So when I'm friends with someone who's when I pick someone who's I'll give an example. I have a black friend who when we talk to each other, I can talk to him about race stuff, and he's like, he has very unique opinions that are not social justice, which is really funny. But he still fights for rights. Like, he believes that. He still fights for black people's rights. He's pro BLM. He's very in it with, you know, fighting for racial equality. But the way he goes about communicating is totally different. It's like we communicate the same language. And it's like he gets that I don't want to be educated like I'm a 5-year-old and going, you know, like, well, Steven, you can't do this thing because of the history of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I know that part. I know the history. I don't agree with the history. I think this is fucking terrible. I hate that all the horrible things that awful white people have done. What I don't understand is, like, I don't know if I'm mentally capable of doing certain things. That might be what an ally is supposed to do. Because sometimes I don't even know how to be my own person. I don't know how to think for myself. I don't know how to be myself. I don't know how to work with myself. Some days I sit here and I'm like, who... I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Because I sit here and I want to be more than what I am. Physically. I hate that my mental faculties keep me from thinking properly or being a better ally. There's a bug on the window. Or not on the window, on the screen. So, like, some days I sit here and I'm wondering, what do I want? Do I want to be Steven? I don't know what I want. I don't know who I am. You know, I get told, people ask me, where do you want to be in 10 years? Some days I sit there and I look at them and I go, I don't want to be in 10 years. Where do I want to be? In a coffin. And then other, I'm kidding. But in other, I mean, it's half, I'm half kidding. But like, with other people, I don't know. I don't know. I've had to sit here with certain people. They ask me questions. I tell them I don't know. They start attacking me. They get mad. And they're like, just do what I tell you. And I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be part of capitalism anymore. I don't want to be part of our political system anymore. I literally want to go live in a cabin in the woods with internet, but not like with no social media, but with internet. Or like I want to go somewhere where I can make TikToks and it's just nature. It's me talking about nonsense, stupid shit I was thinking about that I'm into. Because sometimes existence is so hard for me that I don't want to be here. No matter how hard I try to feel something, I don't. And then suddenly I'm feeling things. I'm feeling all these emotions. all these different things. They're all infuriated, they're angry, they're mad, they're yelling, they're hooping, they're hollering. I'm screaming and I'm crying, yelling, and I'm dismissed by whoever I'm talking to. So I just stop talking. I go, nah, it's cool. I mean, that's part of the point of this blog, really, is I'm doing this for me. But I am, to a certain extent, doing it for other people. But I also feel like I'm falling apart from my depression, my pain. I just want to help people. Sometimes I just want to help myself. And I feel like I'm... The only metaphor I can give for this is some days it feels like I'm someone who wants to handcraft things, but I don't have hands. Well, that's what's like in my head. I don't know if other people experience that. So, if people want to leave a comment on this, two things. You watched the whole video. Holy shit. Thank you. Appreciate you sitting here with my nonsense. I love you. Even if I don't know you. Sorry if I offended you. Sorry if I triggered you with this video. I don't know if I did. This is just me venting. But I hope that you're okay. I hope that this video connected with someone. I talked about a lot today. Sure, I'll talk about all the same shit again tomorrow or the next day or whenever I make my next video. But this is my first vlog. I just want whoever's watching to know that I love them. I want you to know you're not alone. And that you're gonna be okay. Alright. Bye.